Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Dancing Heart podcast, the place that empowers and inspires you to live in alignment with your heart and joy. I'm your host, Torney Wiggum, here to bring you deep conversations with inspiring guests about purpose, empowerment, and living in alignment. Let's get dancing into this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Dancing Heart podcast. This week's guest, I have Jess Parvin on the show. She is a holistic business coach and branding expert, and she's currently in Playa del Carmen, which is one of my home away from home. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Thanks, Torney. Thanks so much for having me. And it feels so fortuitous that, 2 days after I got to Playa, we're on this call.
I think it's meant to be. Like, Playa is like, keep calling me back. So
Yes,
even
it's a
you
sign.
going to Playa, it's like, it's another sign. So feeling that Playa energy just in this conversation. So yeah, thank you for coming. And before we start diving deeper into the conversation of how to take more action towards your vision and how to use branding as a manifestation, what makes your heart dance today, Jess?
I love that question. I think, like you said, the energy of being here in Mexico, being in Playa del Carmen, is definitely making my heart dance. I just feel so much lighter. It probably has to do with the weather too, leaving Wisconsin last week and the cold to come here to the beach. But there's something else, it's like an energy vortex, and just I just feel so like light and creative and in the flow just by being here. So I recognize that I am very affected by my environment. And this is probably why I love travel so much. But I'm really excited to be here and to be, still working and creating from a new place for a while, which for me is so inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And I can truly feel that energy through you when I talk to you and when I see you. It's Playa has such a special place in my heart, and it's just something about the energy there that you can't really put into words. You just have to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And you were there for doing a retreat, right?
That's part of why I'm here. Yeah, I'm here for a couple months. I've spent several winters here, so it's kind of like you, a home away from home. And this year, for the first time, I'm leading a retreat the first week of March. So I'm bringing a few women, clients of mine from the U.S., to stay in a house and work on our businesses. But I'm really hoping for that. This is something I've always wanted to go on or, create, is like a retreat that's also got a business component, because I believe that our businesses are like such a great catalyst for personal growth and transformation. So I'm trying to combine that energy of, being on retreat, being in community with women, doing healing things, being in this beautiful environment on the beach, and also working towards growing our businesses, whatever the next level is for everybody. So it's going to be very like curated and customized, and I don't exactly know what to expect, but I'm super excited.
I love that. Such an expansion, and I love that you're actually like doing it. Like that was your vision, and now you're putting everything into place and taking that steps toward the vision. You are doing it, leading the way for others. And that's just such a beautiful intro to the topic that we are talking about as well. Like you are also helping others how to really take that steps into that vision. And you can use yourself as the example. Like what brought you, like what are like your process on, hey, I really want to do this retreat in Mexico and create from this community and the healing and this energy. And how was your process on going from, I want to do it, and now you're actually there? You set the date, people are coming, they're showing up, you're doing it.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question to reflect on. I feel like I've been an entrepreneur for many years now, and my business has changed and evolved. And I feel like in the last year or two, probably since going through the coaching certification at DCI, I've leaned more into this like feminine energy of, receiving. And I'm really into human design. I use human design with all my clients. So I'm a manifesting generator, and responding is my strategy. So I'm really trying to lean into like, instead of pushing something out into the world, right? Like years ago, I wanted to do a retreat, and I could have like tried to push it and make it happen. I was kind of, I feel like I've been more attuned in the last year or two to, what do people want? When is the right timing? And just really going with like what feels good and what kind of lines up organically. So this retreat is one of those examples that just lined up beautifully and organically. And last fall, I did a 1-day retreat with my friend Candy outside of Madison where we live. And that was really fun and went really well. And it was kind of an experiment. We just thought, let's collaborate. Like, she's also been an entrepreneur for a long time. And so we did this 1-day retreat. And then after that, we were like, well, what's next? Should we do another 1-day retreat? Should we do an online course or something? And she mentioned that she was going on a family vacation to Mexico. And I was like, oh, where? And she was like, probably near Cancun, somewhere on the Riviera Maya. I was like, well, I'm going to be there for a couple months. So why don't we just jump into a full 1-week international retreat, after doing our 1-day retreat? Why not? And she's game for anything. So she said, okay. And we just kind of took it one step at a time, leaving ourselves lots of flexibility. Like, we rented an Airbnb that had a very generous cancellation policy, knowing that, we're going to leave it up to the universe. If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, that's fine. We're already both going to be in Mexico anyways. So it just kind of evolved from there, and then I had like kind of the right clients who were game for this, and it made sense for them to have that extra week of like really dedicated time to work on their business and some of the mindset shifts we were already working on together. And yeah, I just feel like everything kind of lined up. So it wasn't forced to happen, but I took action as the opportunities presented themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you were just in your flow when you were creating and co-creating, and it was like, yeah, this is fun. Let's do more of that. And then universe is kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna go there, putting things out there, and you're like responding to like, hey, wait a minute, I'm gonna be there too. Let's just do something.
Yeah, I will say that for me, collaboration this past year has been a huge theme, and I just kind of leaned into that and like noticed all the things lining up, allowing me to collaborate with people. And so I highly recommend that for anybody out there who's feeling stuck and like, oh, I'm years away from, creating a retreat or a group program or whatever the next thing is for you. Think about who you could collaborate with and how you can combine, audiences, but also energy and skills. And it's more fun to collaborate.
It's more fun. And that's the whole point, right? Yeah. To have fun. If it's not fun, like, why are we even doing it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go get a 9-to-5 job if you want to have, if you don't want to have fun.
Exactly.
Just make money.
Just to make the money, and then you can have 4 weeks of fun for your vacation or 3, whatever. So now you are in Mexico and doing this, and you're doing this for the first time as well.
Yeah, the retreat, this is the first time for sure. Yeah, the first like more than 1-day retreat.
Exactly. So. And you were just jumping from 1 day to like, hey, let's just go international and host a 1-week retreat. Yeah. Amazing. And that is like a huge quantum leap into just claiming that, okay, that's what I want. Let's just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you've probably had that experience too, right? Where you think something is such a big leap and then you kind of do the math or maybe just follow your heart and you're like, okay, this wasn't so hard. Why was I making it seem more complicated than it needs to be? And this is, I think, what leading into our bigger conversation, what I'm really focused on with my clients is that skill of breaking down the big vision and making it not feel so scary and so intimidating and taking it one step at a time and allowing it to change and unfold as it will, because sometimes we take step 1 and then step 2 is different than we thought it was going to be, right? And the vision changes a little bit. And that's, I think, the power of working with a coach in general, in part, having somebody walking beside you, taking those steps and holding the vision for you. And that's, so that's really what I work on with clients as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's just breaking down the steps, because I remember when I was in the beginning of my journey, it's like, oh, I have this big vision. And then you just keep on dreaming on that vision. It's like, I don't even know where to start. It feels so big. And then it just ends up like, I'm just going to sit dreaming about it a little bit longer, instead of like, you have to take the small action steps. And I think that is that holds so many people back and stuck in the loop of just like dreaming about it. Like, so this is exactly how you help your clients and like, okay, how can we break it down? And I know like the vision is going to change and evolve as you are evolving on the journey. So bring me to the process.
Yeah, so just like you hit the nail on the head, saying like when you're a new entrepreneur especially, or even when you're like changing or pivoting, right? A lot of people I think right now are looking to pivot, even if they're already entrepreneurs, or even if they're already, healers or coaches, they're looking to pivot and refine and work with even more aligned clients and do work that's even more, of their highest good, I would say. And they come to me often feeling overwhelmed and confused. Those are really, really common, blocks or feelings that people have where, like you said, maybe they see the big vision, maybe they know where they want to be. And it feels, like I said, with the retreat, it feels so tangible, but yeah, you're not sure how to get there and you don't want to waste a lot of time. I mean, ideally, I know in my path as an entrepreneur, I quote unquote wasted a lot of time. I'll say it was all a learning process, but I hope to help my clients speed that timeline up, because I took so long. So they come to me confused and overwhelmed, or maybe they're stuck in perfectionism. That's really common, right? Like I can't take step 1 until I have total clarity on step 10, until everything lines up perfectly, right? And even the way I'm talking about, synchronicity and things lining up, it's like there's a level. I mean, I also have to let go of what it's going to look like, right? I know it's not going to be exactly what I think it's going to be. Like with the retreat, I can't hold this like very, very specific vision and not take steps until that lines up, right? Because sometimes something better is coming along and I just don't know what it looks like. So I work with clients who are ready to take action. Sometimes they've been stuck for a really long time. And I think that's what drives them to coaching. Finally, it's like, I really tried to do this all myself, or I really didn't want to spend the money or whatever it is. But I'm ready. Like, I can't wait any longer. I can't put this off. I can't be stuck anymore in inaction. So I work with people a lot as a coach where usually we start with human design. I find that such a useful tool for just getting a little bit of clarity, for me especially, to have a new client and be like, okay, this is how their energy is meant to be in the world. Otherwise, we could have 5 or 10 coaching calls and I could get to know them really well and I could ask them a lot of questions. But I feel like human design just helps us like skip ahead a little bit.
Yes.
And it's always, they always find it. I mean, 99% of the time people find it incredibly powerful and resonant. And it gives us these tangible action steps, right? Like I said, my strategy is to respond. For most of us, if we're generators, that's our strategy. So we kind of start through that lens, right? Like, okay, what does responding look like to you? What does responding feel like to you? How have you used that in the past versus trying to push something out into the world? Like I said, as a manifesting generator, I'm very familiar with that energy, but I need to pull back a little bit and see what I can respond to first. So we start there, and then it unfolds differently for everybody, but working around those blocks that I mentioned, whatever specifically is holding you back, is a huge part of the work. And then I would say, besides human design, my main tool, I guess, or expertise, as you mentioned, is branding, which I see as like a really big topic, right? It's not just about like your logo and color scheme. It's really like who you're being in your brand and your business, who you're talking to, how you're talking to them. So that kind of evolves out of the initial coaching conversations around clarifying your human design, if that resonates, around clarifying your goals, the clarifying the big vision, getting that sort of grounded and locked in, and then we can lean into the branding and start to manifest the vision. I feel like branding is the vision made manifest, right? Like bringing it out into the world through copy, through visuals, through design, through photography.
That's a great like picture of like, hey, let's just break it down. This is the energy, this is your strategy, and then you can bring on the branding. Like, how do you want to bring this vision into life? And there's a lot of blockages that you were mentioning, that you were like, hey, we need to get out of this loop of the stuckness. And like, when is like this breakthrough, when the clients have like, okay, I've been stuck for so long. What takes them to like, okay, I'm out of this loop right now? What is like the step from like the breakthroughs?
Good question. I think it's different for everybody, and I can think of a few examples. I mean, sometimes just hiring a coach is the thing, right? We know, I always talk about like, what is the scaffolding you need to put in place to keep yourself moving forward and taking action, to get unstuck or to prevent yourself from getting stuck. And one of the number one things is like accountability, and somebody walking beside you and like reminding you what the vision is, and reminding you to help take steps. And we all need that, right? I have a coach all the time. Coaches need coaches, of course. I need that accountability to keep taking action for myself. But I hold that for other people. So sometimes that's enough, right? To just like, okay, this is like, I'm dedicated, I'm skin in the game, I'm paying money, I have somebody out at my side, checking in with me, following up, keeping me accountable to the things that I say I want to do. That can be huge. For some of my clients, it's definitely knowing their human design. I will say, especially, well, not especially, but I'm thinking of a couple of clients in particular who are projectors, who felt so seen and understood, and like just had this like total click aha moment when they understood what it meant to be a projector, and that they were kind of been doing things, I won't say the wrong way, but I'll say like against their better, against their energy for most of their life. And then when they see that there's another way to do things, and that human design and our coaching, I think, gives them these steps to take, and this different strategy, different rules to play by, if you will, that can be huge, huge, huge for people too.
Exactly. Just like lean into their unique energy. And that is, I also believe that's a game changer, because understanding more of who you are and how you are meant to operate in the world, and not look at everybody else. You just have to look within. That is also like, wow. Yeah. It's a game changer. Yeah. It truly is. And it was for me too, it's like, wow, this is how I'm meant to be. I'm a generator, by the way.
Yeah.
And you probably got that.
Yeah. I mean, and for generators, we might say like it's easier in some ways for us to take action, but everybody has to do it, and everybody has to do it in the way that makes sense for them, right? For me, it's easy relatively to take action, but like I said, my block is that pushing energy and controlling energy and trying to make things happen too quickly. Classic manifesting generator. So I need, a coach, and I need scaffolding in place to allow myself to step back, to be in response, to be in the flow, to, not be too married to a timeline or a vision, to let it come a little bit more organically and naturally. So everybody has, different blocks, and sometimes human design is really helpful for me, again, to recognize what those blocks are in people. But most of us already know what our blocks are, what's holding us back.
Yeah, we do. And I also think that you mentioned something about being an entrepreneur in the beginning of the conversation, that you learn so much through the process of just being an entrepreneur about yourself. And I can just talk from my own experience. It's like, okay, this is how I envisioned this to be. And you keep mirroring yourself like in every step that you do. And it's like, okay, it requires to step more out of the comfort zone. And I know, like in the beginning, I was just trying to control and hold on to every single thing that I was wanting to do. And it was not giving it any space to like unfold naturally. And I don't know if this is like a common, not even like a mistake from being an entrepreneur, but it's like, I want this, like you're so rigid in like how you're envisioning this to happen. And this process of surrendering, I think that was one of the hardest lessons for me. But I don't know if that is something, how do you...
I think that's hard for
trusting
a lot of us.
The process.
Trusting the process, yes. And I will say, like, I always think about, look and talk to clients about like the entrepreneurial mindset, and like, what have I learned from 10 plus years of being an entrepreneur? And it is about, the process is so much more important than the vision. And there's this like flexibility, and I'll say experimentation. I use the word experimentation to exhaustion with my clients. They're so sick of hearing it. It's always like, this is an experiment. Don't forget, this isn't. And I just mean that as like, don't put so much heaviness and so much like I don't know, yeah, we put like this personal weight on taking the action, right? And on worrying that we're going to fail, worrying that it's going to look different than we think it's going to look, which is absolutely going to happen. So I just try to like prime my clients who are new entrepreneurs with like, that's going to happen. You're going to quote unquote fail. Yeah, that's part of the process. That's part of being an entrepreneur. Again, if you're seriously terrified of failure, have a 9-to-5 job that doesn't challenge you, and just be happy the rest of your life doing that. But entrepreneurship is all about change and experimentation and going with the flow, and tweaking and refining and trying again. So yeah, I feel like that is the process. And then we learn so much through going through that, right? We learn our fears. We learn what our relationship with failure is. We learn how to be more authentically ourselves and not hide, because that's what people are looking for these days.
Yeah.
In a personal brand, I'll say, which is usually the people I work with.
Exactly. So yeah, I love that. It's if you don't want to fail, like don't become an entrepreneur. Like you're going to fail. Like if you sign up to be an entrepreneur, like 100% you're going to fail. And yeah, that's just part of the process. And you just have to keep going and keep trying and keep refining, and and then you will get there. And we were talking about, branding is such an important part of like being an entrepreneur and for manifestations and just bringing that vision to life. How do you go with that with your clients? Like, what is the most important thing in branding?
I mean, I think the most important thing in branding is to get really clear on your authenticity, for lack of a better word. I know that's like thrown around a lot, but it's really not the actual. So I learned this, I think this is one of the big lessons I've learned in the last 7 or 8 years. I came from a background of doing design work, being a designer and doing branding for lots and lots of people, building websites. And I kind of honed in on my niche probably 6 or 7 years ago, that I wanted to work with women entrepreneurs, the kind of the niche I have now, but I was doing branding work for them. And then slowly I started to see how my packages were becoming longer and more involved. And I was coaching people, right? I realized we had to have all these conversations before I could do a really good design work for them, before I could get clear on like what the logo needed to look like, or what the website needed to feel like, or like, what their offer was. Sometimes they would jump right into the branding design process without really clarifying their offer or who their audience is and what they're creating it for. So anyways, that led me into coaching. And now I see like, the design part is really ancillary. It's not the biggest part of the process by any means. And in fact, I do much, much less. I do almost no design work anymore. And so many of my clients want to, save money or do something themselves. And I totally encourage them to like use Canva and design their own logo. But I still feel like that pre-work coaching is the juice. That's the important part. So with the clients, we get really clear on, again, starting with your human design usually, and starting with your big vision and clarifying that, holding it loosely, but breaking it down into steps, and then really diving into all these other aspects, which I see as the core of your brand, who your audience is, right? Like, who do you want to work with? Like I said, I used to do design work for everybody. I had like, plastics companies that I was doing branding for, and insurance agencies, not my niche, not my jam. So when I made the decision to only work with like women entrepreneurs who are creating like soul aligned, purpose driven businesses, as I say, huge shift. So I want people to get really clear on that. And then like what part of their story is really going to align with those people and really going to speak to them. And that's kind of where we start building the brand from, and getting the photos and doing the design work and building the website if that's necessary. I also don't want people like rush into the website building process by any means, because I feel like there is that element of experimentation, especially the first year you're in business. And so I don't encourage people to spend a lot of money or time building this perfect website when they're still experimenting and they're not totally clear on their offer and they haven't gotten feedback yet. So that's why I like to work with people for a longer period to kind of go through that initial branding process that's focused more on discovering who you are and what you're meant to bring into the world before we do the design, before we launch the big fancy website, before you start a marketing campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Um,
It, yeah,
yeah.
and I think I just wanted to highlight something that you said, and that is, what stories are
Mm,
you bringing into your brand? And it's so when you're working with this, it's like you see yourself as like, nothing is special with me. Like, what can you like? How can you help people
mm,
to like see what is special? Like, what stories are you supposed to bring to your brand
mm.
as a reflection? Like, this is something for the audience to reflect on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is why, again, it's so important to work with somebody. Like when I did my rebrand a couple of years ago, I worked with a branding coach. It seems strange, but it's like I need somebody else to reflect back to me what's special and what's meant to be pulled out, because it's so much harder for us to see our own gifts and our own blocks and so many other things than for somebody else to see it. So yeah, the process is, so I always say, like, you, who you are, what you're bringing into the brand, plus your audience, like what they're struggling with, what they're looking for, equals your brand. So we break that down and sort of like look for that bridge. Like what's the bridge between who you are and, again, that like authentic version of yourself that's fully in your power and like offering what you're meant to offer in the world, drawing the bridge between that and the audience. Like, where are they now? They're probably where you were a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever, right? They're usually a past version of yourself. For most of us who are like personal brands, I find like that's pretty common. So
Mm.
you know that person, right? You can identify with where they are, what they're stuck on, what their dreams are, what they're hoping to get, like what the transformation is they're looking for. And you can draw that bridge. And branding is the thing, I think, that connects people, connects me as my highest self to my clients who are looking to get to their highest self. And we do that, I mean, in a myriad of ways, right? Through messaging, through creating really awesome aligned offers that clearly articulate to the audience, again, that this is going to get you where you want to be. This is going to, um, you know, transform you in some way, change your life. And so if you want to give people a takeaway here, I would say, the exercise is to think about where you are now and like what you're offering and who you want to work with. Again, think about your past client as a past version of your current client as a past version of yourself. I feel like that's pretty common. And then think about your story, right? Your whole life, and like, where are the points on the timeline that made a big impact to get you to where you are now? To where you are now as this expert, let's say, at, if you're, whatever you're doing, if you're a coach or a therapist or a healer, like, you have these skills, you're able to help people transform their lives. How did you get there? And sharing that as like the core of your brand story, right?
Mm.
That could be like the about page on your website, or it could be broken down into various types of messaging. But I think we take it for granted that our whole life is an opportunity to express our story. It's not just like, oh, well, I got these certifications, right? Or in the last couple of years, I've really done a lot. No, it's like, it's your whole life experience. There were some turning points probably as a child or as a teenager or in college that made you realize that you were meant to do the work you're doing now. And that's
Mm.
relevant to bring into your story. People are going to resonate with that.
That's more important than like, oh, and I have this certificate and I have this
Mm-hmm.
education. It's more in your story. What you're saying, or what I'm hearing, is that your story is what happens in between those, let's say, like certifications or titles. And it's the conscious choice that you make in doing something different. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of hearing. And maybe this person is not even seeing that thing as a special, like, I didn't do anything special. I just did this naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just who you are.
And sometimes we get that information from their design. Again,
Yeah.
definitely going through your life and all of your experiences is super valuable. But sometimes it's just something innately you that you have. And I mean, again, I could have 10 conversations with you and figure that out and pull that out from you. But usually when I look at your chart, I can figure that out really fast. We can look at your gates and channels. We can look at your profile lines. We can look at your incarnation cross and see like what the bigger purpose is here and what your gifts are. And then when I reflect that back to you and you see it validated in your chart, most people are like, yes, okay, I see that. I haven't wanted to maybe, again, we don't see what other people see sometimes, right? Some people won't admit to their gifts because they think, oh, everybody can do this, or it's not that big a deal, or whatever it is. But when we see it validated in our chart, for a lot of people, that's like permission to bring it into their brand, right? To start talking about it and sharing it with the world. So that can be really helpful too.
Yeah, that's such a great, just to highlight that, like the story. And yeah, and how do you like use manifestation to like branding as a manifestation in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole process we're talking about is the process of manifestation. You know, I did a workshop last week that's available free on my website now, and I didn't use the word manifestation. I think I called it aligned action. It was like how to take action towards your big vision in an aligned way or something. And then I realized like that is the process of manifestation, right? It's the energetics, and I was using human design as a way to sort of get into the energy of what you want to create or what's like authentic and aligned for you. And then it's, you know, deciding what the action is that you need to take once you're super clear and once you're in that frequency. So that, I mean, that is the whole process. And I think that's what most coaches do with people. It really is a manifestation process. But for me, branding is such a great tool because I'm a very visual person. And when I see myself, for example, like branding photography, you know, when I get a great, you know, when I have a great photo shoot, like last summer, I had a photo shoot with a photographer that I really love and trust. And I pulled out, you know, the outfits that made me feel like my highest self. We found the places to go. Like the whole day was like this exercise in me stepping into, like literally stepping into the person I was becoming, right? The really, excuse me, high value, empowered coach who's helping women, you know, like I just kind of like got into that frequency. And I'm like, I'm already am that person, right? But sometimes we forget that. Sometimes I'm just sitting in my pajamas in my, you know, in my office, like working on my computer, and I don't necessarily feel like I am the highest version of myself that I, you know, want to be every day, and what I'm stepping into. So I think photography can be really helpful for having that visual tool, like sort of like a vision board. But you're using it, you know, to call in aligned clients. They're seeing you as your highest self. It allows you, so, you know, a way to, again, cross that bridge between like who you've been and who you're stepping into. And that's really where I want to create with people in like a branding context. I don't want to create the brand around like who you are now even, or who you've been, but like who you're becoming. And I don't think that's, and I think, you know, if we believe in manifestation, it's like, I already am that person. There's nothing like tricky about this. We're not like pulling the rug out from people. It's just, again, like getting clear on like what you're stepping into and fully embracing that. And I think going through the branding process allows people to do that in a way that like, it's like sits with their nervous system better than if they just had a fabulous designer create a beautiful website and throw up some great photos like a week from now, right? We have to like get comfortable with this vision. And that's where I think coaching combined with branding is so powerful to help people really get clear and get comfortable with like who they're becoming and build that confidence and shift those mindset, you know, limiting beliefs and uncover those blocks.
Exactly. And also like what you explain now by just being a part of the doing a photo shoot, that's the part of the process. That's the tangible action steps. That's you stepping more into this version that's more aligned with your vision. And that is like one step at a time. And sometimes I believe people think it's just going to be like a huge step, but these are all the small steps in between. And suddenly I had this realization like, oh, wow, I arrived. Like I'm in my past manifestation right now. It's like, when did this happen? And I start to look back and it's like, what did I do? And it's like, it's not this big step. It's just all the small steps in between that is making the huge jump.
Yeah. And it's so much more sustainable, I think, when you do it, the small steps. Again, this is why I like coaching people and working with them for 6 months or a year, instead of just building a website and, you know, sort of jumping into something that maybe they're not ready for. I can't tell you the number of websites I built for people years ago that like just sat there, you know, beautiful women, talented, who like had so many gifts to give to the world. But it's like we rushed into it. We put out the website and they weren't ready for it yet. They didn't believe it. They didn't believe that they were the healer or the coach that this website was showing them to be. So they didn't share it with people. They didn't market. They didn't, they didn't end up having clients. They ended up getting a regular job or whatever, going back to doing what they were doing. And I see how like it really does need to be small steps sometimes. And again, having somebody to walk beside you and cheer you on and show you the progress you've made. I mean, yes, we all need to look back and celebrate like, oh, I am where I said I was going to be, like, thank you for reflecting back to me. You created the retreat. You've been wanting to do this for years. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, doesn't seem like that big a deal in the moment, but you're like, oh, I got to look back and celebrate where I've come from.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important part of the process too, like to take the time to like stop and celebrate like, hey, look how many steps you have taken. It's so much more tangible if you're walking on the mountain. Like if you're doing a hike, you can look back and like, wow, that's like a lot of steps that I took to come here. But you don't do the same when you are an entrepreneur or in the business. It's like, hey, look back and see how far you have come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as having a coach is helping you to like connect the steps backwards and also to the future. And it's like, yeah, this is how far you come. And that is also a feeling of more empowerment and confidence. Like, yeah, you are actually making progress, even though you don't not seeing any like tangible result, because there's a piece like this energetic piece that you were talking about that's created from within.
Yeah, this is why I always say entrepreneurship is like one of the greatest containers for personal growth. Whether you enter into it with that mindset or not, it's going to show you your blocks. It's going to challenge you. It's going to, kind of push you into this place of being gentle with yourself. If you want to do it in a sustainable way, that's aligned with, again, I think those of us listening here are not interested in business for money's sake, right? Or just for typical masculine version of success. We're interested in expressing ourselves and being of service and feeling aligned with our purpose and being successful financially and like having that stability and security and flexibility in our lives. So yeah, if you want to do it in a sustainable way, I feel like there's all these little mindset shifts and small steps that you're going to go through, and lessons you're going to learn along the way. So I just feel like it's a little easier when you have somebody who's been there who can kind of talk you through it.
Absolutely. And also what I've been like experiencing is that once you are like in alignment, and also what you explain about human design, like using human design and using your branding, it's so much more easier to take the action because it doesn't feel like forcing. It feels more like, this is who I am. Wow, this was fun. This was easy. This was at flow. And the more aligned action you take, it just keeps coming and it just flows in just such a natural and beautiful way.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Really does create its own momentum. There's a coach that I've worked with before who always uses this analogy of like pushing a boulder up a hill. I mean, it can absolutely feel like that in entrepreneurship. And a lot of people give up when they're pushing the boulder up the hill, right? They're trying to figure things out. They're in that experimentation phase. Like they're not seeing the results. They're not clear that they're doing it the quote unquote right way. And maybe they don't have a coach by their side who can say, no, this is part of the process. Like keep going, let's tweak and refine. But then at some point you get to that peak and then it's downhill from there, right? And I don't want to say like it just gets easy because I feel like then there might be another hill, right? It's like if you want to pivot or you want to reach the next level of success, there's going to be another hill. But you go through these peaks and valleys or these like, different phases of your business growth and your personal growth where it gets harder and then it gets easier because you figure things out and you're kind of, in the flow and things are happening more naturally and you have more momentum. And more clarity and you're doing things, in a way that really suits your energy. So it's not so exhausting and doesn't feel like you're forcing things. So I like to try to help people get to that point where they can just kind of, be on their own. Like you don't always need me by your side. Like go through this phase. Once you feel in the flow, like go with it, and then when you want to change again, when you hit a block, when you need to pivot, when you want to, reach the next mountain, let's talk.
Let's talk. Exactly. And I believe that because you're not seeing any tangible result, that's why you want to go like, oh, let me just leave this thing and let me go back. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, they're doing it because they want to do something that lights them up and they're passionate about, but it also needs to be sustainable, like we're talking about, like it needs to create an income. And what do you believe is like the biggest block that is like stopping people from earning money being themselves as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a big one. Again, it can be different for everybody. And obviously mindset is a lot, money mindset is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. And I certainly work with people around that, like some of those blocks might be actual like money blocks. One that comes up that I know I've had in the past is like an upper limit problem. Like I only feel worthy of earning a certain amount of money, so I'm keeping myself stuck there. And when I really dig into it, it's like, oh yeah, I totally see why I'm not, making the income that I think I say that I want to make. It's because energetically, like I'm not allowing myself to go there. So that's a big part of it, but the mindset and the branding, these two things are always in a dance. Like when I'm working with people, it's always like we're always coming back to some mindset stuff. And then we're looking at the branding and that's like the strategic part, right? The strategy and the mindset. We're tweaking and refining, coming back to the mindset when we feel blocked, when we see something's not working. And so it's really both. I mean, branding wise, if I could say what keeps people stuck from making money, I think it's a lack of clarity and a lack of like really clear messaging, especially as far as like what you're offering and who is it for and what is the value. I find a lot of people, and I've totally done this in the past, in the very recent past, like using really like abstract, sort of flowery, fancy language, like saying like, I want to help you become your most authentic self. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like people aren't looking for someone to help them with their authenticity, or they don't realize they are, right? They're looking for somebody usually to help them make more money, maybe feel more self-expressed, maybe be healthier, maybe have better relationships. It's those tangible things that people want, that they put money down to get help with. So whether you're a healer or a coach or whatever, I feel like that's one of the keys that we work with. I work with people around a lot. It's like, just keep drilling down. It's like more and more clarity, getting feedback from your existing clients or past clients can be really helpful for that. But using language that speaks directly to the problem people have, or the transformation that they're looking for, that they know they're looking for. Because sometimes we use language that's like, we know that's the end result, but they don't know that they're looking for that. So again, drawing that bridge between where they're actually at right now and where you're at and where you're taking them, that there's a lot of work to do there. And so that's, again, like the whole process.
I think, and that's the big one. Like, I've been going through that as well. And it's like, you want to have these fancy words and what you've been talking about, but actually they're looking for something else. Like, this is how you just want to code it, but what's under the code? Like, what are they actually looking for? Yeah. And like you were saying earlier, go back and look at yourself a year ago. Where were you? What were you looking for? That can also help.
Yeah, this is part of the like experiment, like the experiment of entrepreneurship, so looking at it as an experiment, like, okay, I tried this language, or I tried these social media posts, or this form of marketing, and I'm not seeing the results I want. So can we look at the data? Can we look at the language we're using? Can we talk to people and get feedback? I probably, put my mailing list in a place too often where I'm asking them for feedback, but most people are generous with it, whether it's like a free workshop I gave or a program, or, getting feedback from a one-on-one client. I want to know, like, why did you sign up with me? Where were you at? What was the thing that had you recognize how valuable this would be? What was the outcome? And then using their own words in your marketing. They'll tell you, like, I was in this place where I was feeling X, Y, and Z, or I needed to get past this. And then you're like, okay, like I could say that directly to people. And so this whole experiment of like getting feedback, going back to the drawing board, trying something slightly different, seeing how it lands, that's part of it.
Yeah. So if you're going to take somebody through the process of like, do you have any, like, this is the action steps towards your vision? Like, if you're going to break everything down, like just sum up everything that we've been talking about, I don't know how many steps you want to, like, points you want to break it into, but like, this is step one. If somebody's like on their journey and looking to start and like very motivated, but like feeling stuck, what you talk about, like what would you recommend them to do like in your process?
Yeah, well, I can speak, I guess, my full process. I call it the holistic business growth process. That again, I hold loosely. I used to be a lot more like rigid in my framework, and now again, I totally recognize that like everybody's different. So, I would say let's have a consultation initially to see where you're actually at. And I think sometimes again we have less clarity about where we are actually at than somebody else might. So that would be the first step. But my full process looks like, pulling this all together, generally starting with human design and just, or whatever the tool is, the coaching work is to uncover your big vision, to really get clear on where you want to go and why. And again, it's the more specific, the better, but also like letting go of that being exactly how it's going to be. Talking about what the blocks are that have maybe held you back in the past, or you feel like are holding you back from taking action or from creating this vision, right? Because if you could do it on your own, you wouldn't be looking for support from me. But getting really clear on that. And then that kind of informs the whole process. But I'll say generally after I call it like the goal setting and clarification process, using human design, then we go into the branding process, which can be, again, long, often, sometimes not so long if somebody's already been in business for a long time, but it's really, who are you being in this brand? What's the highest version of yourself that you want to show up as? Who's your client? And again, this might be getting feedback, talking to people, like where are they actually at? What are they actually looking for? What's that bridge to connect the two? And then that bridge looks like usually creating messaging, maybe taking photos, maybe building a website or tweaking your website. And then after the branding process, we move into like the marketing process, right? Like let's get your foundation built. Let's get really clear on who you're being, who you're showing up for, what your offers are. And then we can start promoting and thinking about like a feel-good marketing system. That's always really scary to people too. It's like, I think we keep ourselves, it's like we spend so much time toiling in the branding process because it's fun, right? It's like, no, I just need better photos, or I need a better website, or I need 6 more months of coaching to like clarify my one little $500 offer. And it's like, no, you don't. You need, at a certain point, you need to just put it out there. And
talk about it.
Get comfortable talking about it, figure out how you can share your value in the best way possible, right? I don't believe that everybody needs to be on like the same social media platforms or on social media at all. There's lots of options, but again, getting clear, and sometimes human design is helpful for this as well, getting clear on what's aligned with your energy. Are you better in person? Are you better on social media? Do you like creating videos or writing? So the marketing process is usually the last
piece.
Few steps, the last piece.
Great. Yeah, I hope this is helpful to listen to, because it's like you as an entrepreneur, and I recognize myself in the whole process that you've been talking about, like all of the stuckness and the blocks, and just it's so much fun with the branding process that like I just want to be here. It's so comfortable. It's so fun. I just want to be there. And then it's like, oh, okay, I'm done. Like, okay, now it's really the time to be like, I don't think I want to do it. Let me just, but just have to do it. Like, just start in one way. And and I think that is it's like this, the final part of the tunnel. It's like, okay, let's just come out of it. Just let yourself be and be expressive. And it's not as dangerous or scary as you feel. And the more you do it, the more normal it feels to you. Like for you, example, hey, I created this 1-day retreat, and now I'm like, let me just do a 7-day retreat. And let's just create it in Mexico. Let's just do it all the way down there. And didn't feel scary. You just felt part of who you were because you were already in that energy of hosting a retreat.
And doing it in a way that felt really authentic to me, right? Like Playa is my special place, so I was like, let's do it in Playa. It'll be comfortable and it'll be travel's so important to me. So it's like now I see like all the ways to bring in more of who I am into my business and my brand, and that's what I'm really passionate about. If you go to my website, like the first statement is like, bring all of yourself to your business. I really love working with multi-passionate women. Again, as a manifesting generator, that's not surprising, but it's like your brand, your business, your marketing can have depth and diversity, and still feel cohesive, So if you're into seemingly disparate things, we can bring them into the brand and make it feel cohesive and speak to an even more niched audience, right? Like the more specific we get, I think the more value we bring. So like now I'm speaking to maybe women, not just women who are creating purpose-driven, soul-aligned businesses, but also women who love to travel and be in groups and be in community and do like this healing work. And I'm seeing business growth as a healing process. And I'm starting to bring that into my brand because that's something I'm so interested in. So it's like, yeah, when we're going through the branding process, it's not like just, what are your expertise? What is your business? It's like, who are you and what would be valuable to bring in here? What would feel fun to bring into this brand? And how can we make your brand like more unique by doing that?
Yeah. What makes you feel good, and just do it in your unique way, because that's how we're going to create our own path and also our own success. So that's I love this.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's such good to have. I wish I had this conversation like a couple of years ago. But I guess we all have to go through the process and then look back and like, yes, we all been there.
Yeah,
so,
likewise.
Yeah. So where can people connect with you? What is your Instagram and the webpage that you were talking about?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm at Holistic Biz Growth. You can also find me on my website, jessparvin.com, with all the things I do, human design readings, the retreat, one-on-one coaching. I have a group mastermind. I'm soft launching, again, putting out to the universe. When the right group of women gather, it will be birthed. But lots of different things I do. Plus, there's a few free masterclasses. The most recent one I mentioned is called Aligned Action 2025. So it really speaks to what we're talking about here. It's like getting people, on that first step. The first step, again, is like clarifying the vision and breaking it down into some steps. And I think in that workshop, you also start to uncover your blocks and think about how to move past them. So it's a really juicy 90-minute workshop that I did live, but you can catch the recording for free.
Yeah, amazing. And if you're in Playa del Carmen, you can hang out with Jess for the next couple of months.
Send me a message. Let's grab a smoothie.
Oh my God, you're going to go to Bajos and have a delicious matcha or smoothie.
If I can get a seat. I mean, geez, it's so packed with digital nomads working on their websites these days. It's hard to get a table. Bajos.
Yes, you need to be early bird. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Good luck with your retreat and have fun in Mexico. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast and bringing your beautiful energy and wisdom and knowledge on here.
Thank you, Tony. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode, and a big shout out to Jess Parvin for joining me on the show today. Catch me on Instagram. It's Wiggum. Tag me in your stories and let me know your biggest takeaway. And I can't wait to see you next week. Bye. Ciao.